Gideon has needed a lot of assurance about his role as judge and the inevitable confrontation with Midian it implies, but God has been very gracious to him. Now, at the beginning of chapter 7, God makes an adjustment of troop numbers to ensure that the glory of victory belongs to him. When we read Deuteronomy 20, we found a similar scene and referred forward to this one. This one is even more striking and contains the curious selection process based on how the remaining soldiers drank the water. Commentators remain unsure what the test implies about the two categories of soldiers, but to my mind it seems like a good method of whittling down the men to a small number, because lapping the water like a dog seems like something not many would do. There is no further significance in the technique. Although Gideon's nerves are not mentioned, God generously offers him a final encouragement. He overhears a dream, but even better, he also hears the interpretation which predicts Gideon's victory. Some rumour of him must have been about, so that when his men roar his name alongside the Lord's, it strikes terror into the pagan armies. The terror is amplified by the cunning trick Gideon plays on them. He uses smouldering reeds hidden in jars, which, when exposed to air, would flare up, and then every man holds one of these. Normally, for a battle at night, only a few men would be selected to hold the torches or blow the trumpets to signal the attack. The main force would need their hands for weapons and shields. When the lights are suddenly revealed and the trumpets blasted, the assumption would be that a much greater force was charging down into the valley in the dark. In chapter 8, some diplomacy is required with the incensed Ephraimites. Disputes like this, especially when some are summoned to battle but do not come, show the tensions which exist between the tribes. This episode, though Gideon skillfully resolves it, anticipates a major conflict involving the Ephraimites in chapter 12. His analogy compares the grapes left on the ground after a harvest of the Ephraimites and the best wine of his own vineyard, saying they cannot compare. Gideon is clearly growing into his role as judge. But when the people of Sukkoth refused to give bread to his 300 exhausted men, note that none of them were killed in battle, Gideon promises revenge for the insult. In verse 6, the officials mock him and his reputation, which is only in the process of being established. It was normal in this day and age to cut one of the hands off a corpse on the battlefield so that the total could be counted. This is why they ask him if he has the hands of these two kings. When they are captured, Gideon refers to a battle at Tabor which we do not know about. It has sealed the fate of these kings, as they were family to Gideon. The honour of executing them is passed to his son, but he is too young. The kings tell Gideon to do it himself and quote a proverb. There is more dignity for them to be felled by Gideon, but practically speaking, they know he will make a cleaner job of it, and they will not linger in pain. Gideon's story is awe-inspiring, but it ends on a sour note. He refuses a dynasty and reminds the people that the Lord is their true king. But for some reason, he constructs a golden ephod, such as the high priest would wear, and installs it in his hometown. He probably intended it as something which would remind people of the great deliverance they had been given, but as verse 27 shows, it became a snare to the people, and all Israel prostituted themselves to it. After he dies, 40 years later, Israel relapses hard and takes a Canaanite god called Baal-berith as their deity. God's kindness and power and the bravery of Gideon are forgotten.